Welcome to Health Oddity, the show that strips away the jargon and hype surrounding all things health and fitness to help you live a long, strong and energetic life. Lining up at the bar this week, here's Peter Lant, Paul Bassett and James St. Pierre.
Hello and welcome to the Health Oddity podcast, episode 81. We hope you have enjoyed the last 3 weeks. We've had three fantastic guests over the last 3 weeks. Mr. Keith Smith, we've had Mr. Steve Cotter, and then we've also had Mr. Ben Morris over the last 3 weeks. And we have some great guests coming up. We have some very strong female real role model guests coming up over the next few weeks. Next week, we will be with Tina Morin from near New York or Brooklyn, I think she's in. So we'll be with Tina next week. And we've got some other great guests lined up over the next few weeks. But today, we are going to go back to some questions that we've had sent in to us from listeners. And Pete, Paul, and myself will do our very best to answer the questions in as much detail where possible, or where they're slightly more broad, to give our opinions and have a conversation around them. But before I do that, can I just welcome the usual hosts of Health Oddity, Mr. Peter Lant. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you very much. Yeah, it's weird. I've had a couple of weeks where I don't seem to have done much, and it's very odd. No, it's honestly, it seems weird. I don't seem to have been out walking as much as I usually do, and all of that sort of stuff. So it's just, I don't know. Everything feels a bit strange at the moment. And I don't know, but I can't put my finger on it. Why it is? Do you know what I mean? You know what I mean? Do you ever have those times when you just like everything doesn't feel like it's flowing like it should? But it also doesn't feel like there's anything different either. So it's very odd. It's very odd. But you know, I'm looking forward to, as we record this, I've just realised it's next week, isn't it? When David's coming over.
Yeah, you'll be down next weekend. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm really looking forward to that. Yeah. So I don't know. It's honestly, it's very odd at the moment. I'm kind of, it's almost like I'm waiting for something to happen but I don't know what it is. It's weird. It's very odd.
Well, the way you've just answered that, if we fast forward to the end of the show, there's a question we're going to end on, and the kind of things you've just been describing there are one of the things that I most admire about you. But we'll come to that later. Okay,
thank you very much.
Okay. Mr. Paul Bassett, how are you doing?
It sounds very existential that Peter's dealing with. Maybe like you're in a Jim Carrey movie and nothing's real.
Yes.
Yeah.
The Truman Show. Yeah.
I might watch that actually. I love that film.
Yeah, the Truman Show.
Maybe
hang on.
Far enough.
I'll just look out the window and see if I can see a big face of Ed Harris looking at me.
Did you walk 100 miles in one direction, or did you just go in a circle?
It was in a circle.
Yeah, well, that tells you everything, doesn't it?
It does, yeah.
Straight, you might have gone through the wall.
Yeah. My thinking behind that was I would be this close to home and walking, and it was the monotony of it. That was that, and it was COVID, so I couldn't go anywhere. But the thing of that was, I was just thinking, I want to. It's seeing if the mental aspect of doing that, because I've done a long walk straight line before from one place to another, and you've just got to get there, right? So the mental aspect of that is I can't give up because I've got to get there. Whereas this was I could give up at any time. So yeah.
Well, there's those crazy races, isn't there? There's ultra marathons, 24 hours, where they just run a 400-meter track.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
That must be mad. Like,
and they have tents in the middle of the track, don't they? And they can just jump off the track and lay down for half an hour and get back up and go back out and do it again. And the
speed they go for 24 hours is like 7-minute miles. It's crazy.
No, it's crazy.
I haven't done anything like that. I've just kind of done my usual thing.
I don't think I've ever done a 7-minute mile. Apart from in the car.
So the
you, James, you kept quiet.
Oh well, people don't normally ask me how I am, do they? No.
We don't really care, to be honest. Let's move on.
No. I'm very good, but I was just going to say thank you. We had quite a few comments and messages sent in to thank us or to to say that people really enjoyed the episode from a couple of weeks ago now with Keith Smith. So it was really nice to hear from Jim Hatcher, to hear from Chris Denning, to hear from Paul Field. Several people in the gym came up and spoke to me about the episode and said they really enjoyed it. So we got some really positive feedback on that episode, which was great. The reason I say that episode, that's the last one that aired when we're recording this one. So the Steve Cotter and Ben Morris hasn't gone out yet. So they are fantastic episodes as well, but we haven't had any feedback on them yet because they haven't been heard. Right, we're going to go to first question, which is from Paul, which was, what are your 5 non-negotiable things for a strong and healthy life? So this can be things, obviously, that you do yourself, and they probably will be things you do yourself and things you would also recommend to clients and people who you work with. So what are your 5 non-negotiable things for a strong and healthy life? If we first of all go to Mr. Peter Lant and see what you have to say. I mean, some of these things will probably overlap with the three of us, but we'll kind of go around and see what we come up with.
Well, do you want us to do all 5, or we're doing one at a time and then see what happens?
Do all 5, and if we've all got the same 5,
I bet you we haven't.
Okay.
Right, because I've thought about this a bit differently, right? Because there's going to be like strength training and things like that, right? I hold them very dear, but that's it's not the obvious thing, but there's other things to do before that, if you know what I mean. It's about Keith might have been talking about this. I know, like a few people have spoke about this, and it's setting yourself up to be ready to go towards something. We'll talk about that later with goals and stuff as well. But you can set a goal and then go, right, I'm ready to go, but you're not ready. You've got to get everything in order first. So the 2 of the main things are sleep and walking, but not sleepwalking, which I used to do when I was younger, but not at the same time. But I try to go for 8 hours a night. I get to bed by 10 o'clock. I get up at 6 o'clock in the morning most days. And I go out walking a lot. I've got a spaniel who's nearly 3 years old. We go out and do, I think I'm probably doing about 60 miles a week at the moment, which is a lot, but I really enjoy it. So, I'm not doing it because I have to, sort of thing. I'm doing it because I want to. So those are 2 things. Which order will I do these in? So learning, I like learning stuff, just keeping my brain ticking over. And Steve Cotter was talking about this 2 weeks ago, of everything that you've learned in the past, it could be wrong. So you've got to go and find out for yourself. He's kind of self-educated, which obviously you've got to, if you're going to go and educate yourself, you've got to make sure you're getting it from, you're getting information from legitimate sources, haven't you? So it's kind of like, it's a tricky one, that one, in this day and age when you can go and find information anywhere. But that's what I like to do. And also like Rubik cubes and stuff like that, maths problems, just things to keep my brain ticking over. Cause I don't want to, I don't want my brain to, atrophy, shall we say. So there's that. And then the last 2, one's time spent with loved ones, so friends and family, like specifically, Sean and the boy over here. Those are the 2 things that are the 2 beings that I spend most of my life with. I haven't got any kids, but those are the 2 things I spent most of my life with. So those are the things that, I need to work on. And you need to work on all relationships, but those are the ones that are like, I have to have those, and they have to be spot on. And if they're ever not, it needs to be sorted, nipped in the bud, because I've been on the wrong end of that as well. And also it's weird because I've talked about this before. The being I spend most time with is the dog. I spend more time with him than I spend with Sean. It's weird. But anyway, and then the last one is fun, like doing things for fun, because I think when you get to a certain age, and this certainly happened to me, I was like, what do I do for fun anymore? I don't know. And I didn't do anything. I basically worked when I had a proper job, which I go on about sometimes. But I used to go to work, finish work, come home, eat, watch telly, go to bed, and then at the weekend I'd drink my way through it until Monday and then do it all again. So there was just no, like, the fun bit was like drinking, which, as we know, like that doesn't end well. So yeah, things like, booking things like going to concerts and gigs. I've just booked something today, just doing little bits and pieces here and there, just like things for fun, thinking, what am I going to do for fun, and scheduling it in as well, because if you go, I should do this, you end up not doing it. Whereas we'll go, right, so like booking stuff at venues or whatever, is like, it goes in the diary and you've got to go. So those are it might be slightly different to the way you might think, or people might have thought we would come at this, but I wanted to come at it from that different way, because if you've got all those in place, you can, things like that, I think, keep you feeling less overwhelmed about the other stuff that you have to do. So if you schedule that stuff into your lifestyle becomes easier. And I say that from experience. I'm not saying that's going to be the same for everybody, but like what Dave Whitley was saying, he talks about things from his own experience, and this is from my own experience from being bogged down at work to having the lifestyle I have now, which is enjoyable, which is lovely.
So just to recap your 5, just in sort of 1 or 2 words, what were they again, Pete?
So sleep,
yeah,
walking, learning, or just keeping the brain going, keeping the brain active, time spent with loved ones, and fun. I'm not saying time spent with loved ones isn't fun, but it's a different thing.
Yeah, no, that's great. So that's five really good kind of lifestyle practices, kind of habits, things to focus on, which is fantastic. Paul, what about yourself?
Well, your previous life sounds much like mine without the drinking.
Yeah.
Those split shifts do kill me. But yeah. But no, I think I don't want to kind of, there's going to be some overlap to a degree. So, I mean, we just get out of the way. Certainly, without doubt, if I'm frustrated, if I'm busy, or if I've got social engagement, or whatever it is, I do have to put some block of time for me to train, just to release my mind, because otherwise I'm either working and still very enjoyable to train. There are times when I don't want to do it, but I know I need to do it. So that is always a non-negotiable. I think I have to say that. But also on the flip, on a kind of partner to that is the kids being active as well. That's certainly a non-negotiable in our week, because it's quite easy, because we don't have any family in the area to rely on the digital nanny, the TV or anything like that. So we try and, at the weekends, I'll take them out to Wimbledon Common. We'll go for a good hour, 2 hours, getting them out there walking. Even the 2-year-old now is pretty good at walking, and they'll do a lot of physical activity, lots of just different things. And it's non-negotiable, I think, for them to see me active and my wife active, and to, they'll see my wife doing her yoga and some of the strength exercises in the mornings. And I've got my 100 press-ups I do a day, which, whenever they're walking around me, I'm suddenly on the floor doing 10 press-ups or whatever. So, no, but they're always seeing us doing something, that's to do with well-being. We try and talk in that way as well. Talk about, like, how they practice things. So I think a lot of non-negotiable stuff is to get myself into a mindset where I'm talking about practicing things and learning things. Very much like what Peter said about how you have to have that open mind. You have to be a student a lot of the time in order to stay fresh. And certainly there's a lot of areas in my life where I still have quite a thirst for learning. And it doesn't matter how long my hours are or how tired I am or whatever. Actually, I find quite a lot of respite in doing that. Also, so I'll have a bath in the evening, and I'll be doing a lot of kind of like just general kind of, you got a great thing about a phone or a book or whatever. Just read a book, I'm looking at all kinds of videos from like business ones through to workout ones. Also Steven Seagal videos about people watching Steven Seagal films and realizing how bad every single Steven. It's great. It's just like this weird subculture of people who watch Steven Seagal films.
You spoke about this last week. It sounds like you've got a real thing against Steven Seagal.
I think he's just an absolute egotist, but it's brilliant to watch him. You know, it's just he sounds like, you know, he always writes himself out as a Navy SEAL or like some kind of messiah. So, but yeah, you know, just kind of trying to expand my mind outside the Steven Seagal videos.
I was going to say that sounds like you're trying to narrow it a bit.
I'm trying to narrow it. Yeah, yes. Well, the thing is, isn't it really easy? I mean, we can sound a bit high and mighty, saying, "Well, we've got all this learning and stuff," but you know, and I was listening to the knees over toes guy, and he's a great, you know, he's got such great ideas, but you know, he's one of the reasons I think he's very productive is he's cut out all entertainment from his life.
Yeah, I heard that. Yeah, he's
knees over toes guy, you know, spent 2 years trying to remove all entertainment and distractions from his life, and that's great, and a lot, and some people might be able to sustain that, and it's, you know, he's obviously has the capacity to do it. You know, he enjoys those kind of things, but I'm sure all of you find things which are mind-numbing that you quite enjoy. You know, or whether it's watching something on a YouTube video or just being something silly that just clears your mind. Otherwise, it's quite easy just to think that we spend all our time in self-betterment. But sometimes it is watching videos on YouTube that are kind of weird and pointless, you know. So, but having that time to yourself and trying to carve out that time, I think, should be a non-negotiable. It's something I struggle with. It's something that I have as a kind of ideal. It's like, okay, I need to make some more time for me to be creative and to think. Yeah, I've got two guitars on the wall, which I'm just not using. It's been a few years since I spent a lot of time using my bass guitar. And I've just focused on other things, but it's difficult to carve out that time. And I realize, I think, that I've spent a lot of time just zoning out, which it has its value, and I quite enjoy it. But you know, trying to make a bit more time to be creative and create that creative space, I think that's a non-negotiable. And creative space is difficult because it sometimes you need to create some. I do very well in a bit of silence, a bit like sitting down at least a couple of hours a week, just in a coffee shop with whether my laptop's open or a notepad, and just coming up with creative ideas, because otherwise I'm just in the midst of doing things all the time. I'm just doing admin or doing classes or doing this, that, and the other, and trying to create that space is a non-negotiable, but it's not always easy. Whether I do 3 hours a week of it or 2 hours a week, I try to get some of it in. I think that's really important. I don't think that's 5, but those are the ones off the top of my head.
Okay, cool. So that was more, we'll just recap broadly what you just if you can sum up what you've just said in into the 2 or 3 points that you used there. One was certainly sort of almost like downtime or relaxation time or entertainment time or fun time almost.
Yeah, it was well, the first one was obviously training. The other one was setting a good example for the kids and making sure that they're really active. That's definitely non-negotiable. I'm always trying to be present in that. Another time is creative space, a creative space where the mind can just breathe, which is very easy. So there was that downtime where we spend a bit of time just zoning out, and it's easy to do that because it's very passive. But creating that creative space of that hour where you actually are active, but at the same time not doing things, it's quite an abstract concept, but it certainly needs to play a role in my week in some capacity, whether it's a couple of hours or I can get multiple in.
Excellent. I think for me then, I've probably tackled it a little bit more straightforward, a little bit more, I suppose, sort of practically, in terms of things that I do. And the way I read something the other day I shared it in my group. I think it was from James Clear, and it said something along the lines of setting goals is all well and good, but what actually moves you forwards is having sort of processes or systems in place that allow you to actually enact the kind of behaviors or habits that you need to make those goals happen. So just focusing on the end result doesn't actually get you anywhere. It's actually breaking it down into the daily. So I've got some sort of daily things that I make sure I do that's been probably for about the last 14 months now. So the first one being sleep, making sure I'm in bed at the latest 10 p.m. every night, and I'm asleep usually by 10:30 to enable. That's based around working backwards to make sure I get 7 hours sleep a night minimum, which I do. Increasing my water as much as possible. So very straightforward things, but again, sort of aiming for 2.5 to 3 liters a day. Walking, which I know, Pete's mentioned and Paul, you mentioned as well. I think just getting as many steps in as practical throughout the day. I don't get anywhere near in as much as Pete, obviously, but just when there is an opportunity to, walk and pick the kids up from school or walk into town or something like that, then I'll do that. Strength training, as you've both mentioned as well, something that I think is really important that I do 5 days a week now, and that's a non-negotiable. And then the other one being kind of trying to limit processed foods as much as I can. So just 5 straightforward kind of health and fitness related lifestyle practices. So sleep 7 hours a night, water 2.5 to 3 liters a day, walking. I don't really count my steps, but just as much as I can throughout the day when the opportunity arises. Strength training 5 times a week, and limiting processed foods as much as possible. So hopefully we've all 3 of us have kind of given you some slightly different things there.
Hang on, I'll tell you what I like about 3 of those things you've mentioned don't take any time at all. So sleep and strength training are going to take up time, right? Because they just are. Walking, people think, well, that takes up time. You've just said, go and pick the kids up from school. There's opportunities to walk throughout the day. Cutting out processed food, that doesn't take any time either. I mean, okay, you're going to have to make food from scratch and that, which does take, but there's quick recipes and there's ways around doing that of bulk making and putting stuff in the freezer. And what was the 5th one?
Water, probably you're going to say.
Oh, yeah, and drinking water. I mean,
Yeah.
So 3 of those things, non-negotiables, don't take any time. So there's no excuse not to do those, really, is there?
Exactly. And they just take a bit of planning. Really, the one that takes the planning is the sleep, but it's setting those parameters in place where if you give yourself a cutoff, then you just stick to it, which is great. The next question, which kind of leads us on to, which was from Tara. And Tara, I'm going to read the question. She says, goals. There is a lot of emphasis put on goal setting. I struggle with this, and I wonder if it's okay not to have a goal. I often feel that because I'm not striving to achieve something, that I'm not doing well enough with my training. I can deadlift 70 kilos, but I don't want to lift heavier than that. Is it okay to be happy where you are? Question mark. Discuss. Smiley face. So we've spoke about this before in various podcasts, I think. Do one of you want to kind of kick off with what you would say to, if one of your clients, if you had this conversation with them, how would you discuss this?
Okay, I'll. Paul wasn't fast enough there. Well, do we need goals? I mean, it depends, doesn't it? If you're starting out, your goals could be just to do something, just to, do 2 sessions a week or whatever, 1 session a week, 2 sessions a week, whatever it is, go for a 10-minute walk a day or whatever it is. So Tara sounds like she's already quite consistent in training and all of that. So therefore, not really, because as long as you're enjoying it and you're going along and you're keeping fit and healthy, then not necessarily. You don't need a goal until there's something that you want to achieve, and then you can set a goal for that, right? So, and it's kind of like one of those things, because she's like obviously saying, I'm happy where I'm at. And I can use myself as an example on this. I'm happy where I'm at, just training, what have you. And you will be until you're not, right? So it's the getting comfortable thing. She's obviously comfortable in what she's doing and all of that, which is great. And at some point, it may or may not happen, and that may be it for forever, and that's brilliant. But it might get to some point where you're like, right, actually, do you know what? I've been doing this for a long time now. I want something different, which is what I did. I was getting stronger and stuff like that, and then and then I was just maintaining where I was at for a couple of years, which is why then I spoke to Paul and said, right, you know, I want to increase this, and I want you to help me. And since then, I'm really glad I did that, because a year down the line from that, I'm way stronger, and it hasn't compromised my mobility and all the other stuff, or my life. It hasn't compromised anything. So all them non-negotiables that we spoke about are still happening. So yeah, the answer is like I say, it depends. From my opinion, the answer is it depends. You don't need a goal until such times as you decide that you're going to do something, and then you can set a goal for that. But there's no problem with just having fun for a year or 2 years or 3 years or however long. So, you know, you're always happy until you're not, aren't you? Basically, that's how it goes. So as long as you're enjoying it, then yeah, keep doing it. And then if at some point you're not enjoying it anymore, or you become less consistent, or whatever, or another priority takes over, that's when you need that. You need something to drive you on. That's what I would say. And then that's when a goal is required. So not everybody, and we've spoke about this before, because like Tara says, it can paralyze you, because you're like, I'm working towards this thing, but like it's not necessarily too hard, but it just takes up too much of my time or whatever. And then it becomes less enjoyable. So yeah, I'd say no, you don't need to have one. But it depends on the type of person you are, and it depends on whether you're enjoying your training, you're being consistent, and all of that. So yeah.
Excellent.
What do you reckon, James?
Well, I was going to say, I think we lost Paul. Paul's back with us now, though.
Paul's having a nightmare, isn't he?
Can you hear us okay, Paul?
I'm back again.
You're back again. Did you hear the question, Paul?
Yeah, I did. About having a goal, yeah?
Yeah, about if you have to have a goal or not. I mean, what would you, if you had a client who came to you with this kind of question, what would your advice be? What would the conversation be?
Yeah, I think that's perfectly legitimate thing, to not have a goal. You can always be slightly facetious and say, yeah, well, you actually have a goal, but it's probably be more consistent, be in a maintain, change behavior, something like that, and you could just I think when it's a situation like that, you just got to understand what they want from. So if they're working with me, then it's just having an understanding of what they actually want from what we do, which could just be that, look, I just need a bit of help, just to stay on track. I really enjoy moving a lot. I really enjoy just taking time out of my day where I focus on myself. And if I make progress, it's great. I mean, I had one lady sit down with me. I said, "What's the goal?" I said, "Well, I just want to bumble on a little faster than I am at the moment." And that was it. So she didn't have a specific thing. She just she's actually become really strong just by doing that. And actually, I think a lot of people who have that kind of mindset end up doing pretty well, because they just integrate it into their life. I mean, I suppose it's no different saying, what's your goal for your children? What's your goal for your, for today? Or, what's your goal for your life? Or, I don't know. I just want to live a life that I'm happy with, and that's long and healthy, etc. And so I think immediately I just say, that's fine. It's cool.
Yeah, I think for lots of people that I kind of train, kind of, general, we use the term, normal people, general population, people who aren't, they're not competitive, they're not competing at anything, they're not sports people, they're just after kind of lifestyle, health and fitness. And a lot of these people may be busy as well. Sometimes almost the pressure of having to have a goal that you're working towards and be very systematic and very focused and very driven can actually put a level of kind of stress onto the whole proceedings that doesn't need to be there. I think, I mean, I know working with Paul at the moment and working towards what I'm trying to do, when there's a time deadline in place, it starts to get a bit stressful when you're trying to do something and you have to hit certain numbers by a certain time, or you maybe try. We've got certain members at the moment. There's the Chelmsford Half Marathon this Sunday, and people are training for that, and they've maybe got a time in their mind they want to get, and they're kind of getting towards the day. They're a bit, I don't know if I've done enough training. I don't know how I'm going to perform. I don't know if I've, and it all becomes a little bit stressful, and which is fine if that's what you want and that's what you're driven by. But I don't think that having to have, these hard and fast kind of goals is necessary. For, I'd probably even say, the majority of people. We're going back to what we spoke about with Keith the other week. It's increasing frequency, it's increasing consistency, and it's being fit and healthy and moving well, and all the things we've talked about before. Maybe getting more sleep, maybe eating less processed food, drinking more water. All these things are going to have a positive effect on you, and you don't necessarily need to train for a 5-minute snatch test or the tactical strength challenge or to do a twice body weight deadlift or so, and I think a lot of that in the past was probably, I was part of the problem with many people, because when I first started, I really did, or not even when I first started, but, a little while ago, up until fairly recently, I may have been really trying to push people towards having a goal, because you always think, well, if you've got a goal, you'll be more motivated. But I think when you're working with people in their 50s, their 60s, their 70s, it's all the stuff we've talked about before, isn't it? The goal is to enjoy going on a holiday and to be go out for a 10-mile walk and have a pub lunch and to play with your grandchildren and to all those kind of things, So yeah.
Well, I thought this when Paul was talking of the goal. You don't have to have like a concrete goal, but you need to know why you're training, what you're training for. And if it's just to be fit, healthy, live longer, play with the kids, play with the grandkids, whatever, that's a goal, isn't it? And that's an ongoing goal that this time next year, you can still move the same as you did this time last year, then you're doing all right.
Maybe part of it, is the fact that someone has made, I think, rather than thinking about a goal, it is to think about, am I a person making a decision in my own favor? And therefore, so rather than measuring your success by achievement of goals and results and stuff like that, maybe measuring your success by your ability to make decisions at any given point. And maybe one of the decisions in terms of what we do is a bit like, if before there was motorways, before there was paths and stuff like roads or whatever, people used to use the waterways, and essentially you just need to get your boat in water and let the water take you downstream, and it would take you to where you want to go. And it's a bit like saying, all I start working with Paul, James or Peter, and I know that I'll be taken downstream to where I want to be, and all I need to do is make the decision to get on board. And then let that process just unfold, and I'm just easy with that. And I just, like you mentioned, and the internet's been a bit in and out, but something about 70 kilo deadlift. So if that person's already just seeing great results, then it means that they've made a great decision and they're being consistent, and the goal doesn't really matter because they're just on the journey. The journey, all about journey, isn't it?
And I think someone who we had on, I can't remember who it was, but someone talked about how, and I don't want to write people off once they get to sort of 50, 60, 70, but one of the guests, that we had on, who I think was probably in their 60s themselves, I can't remember the individual now, but said that actually, when you do start getting older, like I say, we have a number of people we train in their 60s and 70s now, slowing down the rate of decline is actually a positive, is a good thing, rather than always striving for. So if you can deadlift, if you can deadlift 70 kilos, 80 kilos, 90 kilos, and you just stick at that, but every year you can keep doing that, when most people are declining, as they get older. If you can maintain where you're at and reduce, halt, or slow that rate of decline, then you're doing good things for yourself as well.
That's absolutely it. Because people say like, "Oh, I can't do what I used to do because I'm getting old," and it's like, yeah, but it doesn't mean you have to give up. Because it was Dan. I think it was Dan John who talked about this, and it was basically like, yeah, you will decline, but you can slow. Yeah, but you can just make sure you don't decline by the time you're 70.
Mm.
You know, your decline might be by the time you're 90. You can put it off for 20 years. So, yeah.
Because, I mean, we've got, Edith, who I trained for years, she's in her 60s. She's getting stronger.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So people can do that if they're target driven and goal driven and want to do that. But I don't think it's like anything. It's like when we had the episode with Dave Whitley, it's setting goals that are aligned to who you want to be and not feeling like you have to set goals to please, your trainer, the other people around you. Is doing what's right for you, isn't it? So,
well, that's why I know you had another question a while ago, which we might get to in another episode, but it was about training standards, and they can make people feel
inadequate.
Yeah, because there'll be these training standards. Here's what you should be able to do as a bloke in your 30s, and here's what you should be able to do as a woman in your 40s or 50s, and here's what you should be able to, and it's like, well, I can't do that. So does that mean I'm not good enough? And it's like, no. And some of them are really hard, and then others are like, well, I can do that and I can do that. So, but they're kind of maybe not imposed, but they're kicking around on the internet here and there, aren't you? And you might stumble across them and think, well, oh, I'm not doing well enough. And it's like, it doesn't matter because they don't mean anything.
In many ways, it's like people who, maybe we've all had it, I know, where people will come to you and say, I weigh this much, but I should weigh this much because my BMI is 27 and it should be under 25. So I need to be here, and it's kind of a arbitrary kind of number that's there, that if you're not there, you feel like a failure, or that you're not good enough in some way.
Well, Steve Cotter said as well, didn't he, when we asked him about what his training looks like and what he has in it, and how he decides what to put in and what to take out. And he was like, he doesn't care if he can lift something off a bench and he can lift more weight next week and then the week after and the week after, if it doesn't make him move better, if it doesn't make him faster, like the fight or flight thing that he was talking about, if it doesn't add to that, then it doesn't matter. So if Tara can lift 70 kilos in a deadlift, but she can still move well and and touch her toes and all of that sort of stuff, then it doesn't. And if she adds more to the bar and it's going to take away from that or not change that, then it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, no, that's good. So hopefully that's a good conversation around that. I think. Right, the next question comes from my brother, Edward, who listens to the podcast every week, and one of the things he said. Now, just to give a little bit of background, and this is something where we can really sort of strip right back and know that we are talking to an absolute beginner. And I'll say, bless him, he started doing some training recently, and I shouldn't laugh. Sorry, Ed, if you're listening. He had a dumbbell, and he'd finished doing, I think he was doing some curls or doing something with this dumbbell at home, and he put the dumbbell on a chair, and the dumbbell rolled off the chair and landed on his foot and broke his foot.
Oh no!
Started with the best intentions. So what happened? Anyway, sorry. I wouldn't laugh if it was anyone else, but it's my brother, so I know.
If someone did that in your gym, as the gym owner, meant to be like duty of care, and that's like, oh dear me, look at that.
Anyway, so what he did was he's gone along. He's a very intelligent chap, family guy, good career, all that sort of stuff, but wanted to become more active and physical. Went along and joined the local leisure centre, swimming pool, that sort of thing. And he's been swimming, which is fantastic. And then he decided that he wanted to start using the gym at the swimming pool in the leisure centre. And he went up there, and I think he might have had an induction and a show round and that sort of thing, like you would do normally. And he just feels a bit lost. So there's lots of machines up there. He just probably, and it's like what Keith said when Keith was on a few weeks ago, when he said most people coming into a gym will train. I think the numbers he used was 1.2 to 1.4 times a week. And if you're really lucky, they'll stick it and they'll start doing it maybe twice a week, so that is the average person who will use a gym or a health club or a leisure center. It's between 1 and 2 times a week. So that's what we need to kind of work at and look at. And sometimes when we talk about things and we're used to training, 3, 4, 5 times a week, we need to remember that the vast majority of people, it's 1 to 2 times a week. So he's gone into the gym and there's lots of equipment, lots of mainly machine weights, which is fine. There's a place for machine weights and things in the world. And he asked me, and I said, well, we'll talk about it on the podcast because then it will help more people. So I'm sure there's more people out there as well who it would help. And he said, if I'm going to use these machines, so if you think about things maybe like a leg press, like a leg extension, leg curl, chest press, shoulder press, lat pull down, these sort of machines, what is the best set and rep range to start with for him in terms of how many sets and how many reps, and how does he gauge how hard he needs to work? For general, like I say, for general health and fitness, he's probably going to be doing it once to twice a week. What would you guys say to someone in that situation? Assume that they know how to use the machine safely, and they've been shown how to do that by an instructor at the leisure centre and whatever. What's a good place to start in terms of numbers of sets and number of reps, and how to gauge what weight to use for each exercise? What would you guys say?
Did you say which exercises they were?
No, I just kind of said just to have a general, if you think maybe like a chest press, a shoulder press, a lat pull down, a leg press, standard sort of gym machines. But yeah, you can include that if you want, Paul, and say maybe to move towards certain exercises primarily over others if you want.
Yeah. Well, I think if he's being if you take it as a given that he's going to be in on average over the course of a month 5 or 6 times, then we could work with that. If it was completely intermittent, then you're probably just going to go in and just see how you feel on the day, and if they're machines, then they're probably going to be fairly safe to push yourself on. But I would always say when it comes to pushing yourself, it should be on the lighter side until you're very experienced and you can just push with higher reps. I mean, what we do on the A12, which is a great kind of technique, is we go to a very soft maximum. And a soft maximum is that you've got plenty of reps in the tank left over, maybe 4 or 5 reps where your form is really good. And you could just push on a very light weight on your final set. Say for example, you didn't want to do too many exercises, so you did 5 or 6 sets, and on that last set, you just went for as many reps as you could. So you gave yourself 4 sets of 10, and then on your final set you do max reps. If you could do that, and then every week add 2.5 kilos and see where you go until eventually, if you struggle to hit the minimum of 10 reps, then you could maybe move into a different way of programming. But I think it's quite good to have some element where you can push yourself as hard as you can in a safe way without injuring yourself. I don't think you would injure yourself on any of those machines.
So just sort of to paraphrase what you said, you think maybe 3 to 4 sets of 10.
Yeah.
With a weight that you can complete all reps in set.
All reps, pretty easy. Yeah.
Yeah. Say if you're doing 4 sets of 10, you can complete all the reps for 4 sets of 10. But on the last set, if you feel you can do more, you might push to 12, 15 reps, something like that, or until you feel you want to stop.
So a good thing I give my clients quite a lot, because a lot of my clients only have a certain amount of time to train. And when I train people remotely, I might give them a superset of exercises. But say we're doing bicep curls. So, like every guy knows bicep curl. It's good for both men and women, and it's quite simple to do. So obviously you've got to do it fairly strict. I like to do them against the wall so they can be pretty strict. And you would do your prescribed number of sets. Let's say we did 5 sets, and we did 4 sets of 10 with a very light weight. That lightweight 4 sets of 10, super easy. Then that 5th set, you can really let rip and just go for a max out. And the next week, you add 2.5 kilos, you do 4 sets of 10 and go for a max out. And you just slowly over time just push and push and push, and eventually your max set will come in line with your sets of 10. You know, and it's a good way of just getting a bit of pump and keeping it safe and just starting easy, knowing that you've got an opportunity to let rip at the end of it. Because otherwise what happens is you get guys that come in, they pick the heaviest weight straight away because it gives them a pump, and then the following week they try and do it a little bit heavier, and they've already started heavy and they've got nowhere to go.
So I think one of the main things, if we were giving advice to, you know, specifically my brother and then other people similar, is to kind of check your ego and not, you're not going in there trying to lift heavy. You're going in there with something in mind, whether it be 3 sets of 10 or 4 sets of 10, and you're picking a weight that you can complete all of those repetitions. You're not aiming to, so I think so many people aim to just go to fatigue till they can't physically do any more. And especially when they're new, they're going to be very, very sore for potentially for days afterwards, aren't they? From doing that.
So here's a workout plan, really simple. 3 exercises. Say you did bench, the chest press, the shoulder press, and a leg press. And you just did exactly the same programming. I mean, this is like just so easy to do. Same programming for each one. 4 sets of 10, 5th set, max reps on every single one of those. And at each week you're in, you add 2.5 kilos, and you're always maxing out. And that keeps it really simple. You know, rather than saying, okay, we've got to do a 5 rep max, and then we've got to do a calculation of 50%, and before you know it.
And you're using exactly the same weight for all 5 sets, yeah?
Yeah, exactly.
It saves, yeah.
Same progression for same sets and reps for each workout. You know, you're doing 5 sets on each one, 3 exercises. Every week you progress, you just add more weight.
No, that's good.
I don't know if it's optimal, but it would work.
Yeah, exactly. And it's what we said with Keith, wasn't it? It doesn't matter if it's not the best program in the world, but you do it twice a week versus the best program in the world that you do once a month. The first one's better, you know. So without a doubt. Anything you'd like to add to that, Pete?
Well, I had something else written down, which is something, it's very similar. But I'm not going to say what it is because it'll just confuse everyone, right? So what Paul said is a good way, right? So try that. And if it doesn't work, come back and ask us again and we'll give you another way, right? But what I would say is definitely start out on the lighter side than heavy. Okay, so if you, like what Paul says, if the max reps at the end, you can only do 1 more than you were doing with all the other stuff, then it's too heavy. And also be mindful that you want some left in the tank at the end. Like you're going to do the max reps at the end, but you don't want to be burnt out because you've got a job, you've got kids, you've got other things to do, right? You've got life to do as well. So you don't want this to get in the way of life. There is that, but also, and there's disputes behind this of which, like, whether it's a thing anymore and what have you. I saw Eric Cressy did a video on this. But for a total beginner, this is a good way to think about it. Just match your pulls and pushes. So if you're doing a chest press, do some like lat pull downs or something like that. Or if you're doing, if you're watching, I'm doing push things. But if you're pressing bell, like something above your head, or you're pressing it forwards from your chest, you want to be pulling back the other way or pulling down. And the same with legs. If you're pressing something, you want to be lifting something to use your hamstrings. So there's a 2-session a week program with what Paul said, that rep scheme with, I don't know, 4 exercises, 2 pulls and 2 pushes, and that's it.
It's perfect.
And
I reckon if you did that, you get really strong. You know, you get the beginner gains. You get, for 2 months, you'd see great progression.
Absolutely,
just give you inspiration. You know,
and then after that, you can start to then think, right, hang on, am I into this or not? Because if you are, then you can start to look into it a bit further. But for the way to go is Paul's rep scheme and just consider those things, and you'll win. Everyone wins on that. Every beginner wins on that.
Chris Zaremba does the same plan he did right at the beginning of his. He was shown a training system by a personal trainer in the States, and he still does variations of that.
Yeah.
Years later, because
another thing I'll say is avoid doing what anyone in the gym tells you. Not like the trainers and stuff like that, like maybe, but there'll be people around who'll watch you and go, "Oh, that's too light," or come over and go, "Oh, you can add more weight to that because you're making that look too easy." Just say no, it's fine. I've got it. Thanks. Thank them for the help and say no.
And then the other thing,
because that'll inevitably happen as well.
And then the other thing that I'd say is and it's something that we have to say really, is if you are gonna do this, it probably is, and it's what we always say. I wouldn't try and fix my own car. I wouldn't try and fix my own electricity if I had problems in my house. I'd get someone in to do it who knows what they're doing. So we've given you some advice to start off with, which is a good place to start. But if it's something you want to do more, and you maybe do want to say, well, actually, I'm going to try and do this twice a week, every week, then it probably will be worth, investing, not a huge amount of money, but to get one of the trainers there, either with the instructor or one of the trainers there, to maybe spend a few sessions with you, helping you, showing you new stuff, writing you a program, because obviously we can't really tell you what to do. We don't know the equipment. We don't know exactly the layout. We're just giving you some broad brushstroke stuff. But, for the sake of, potentially a couple of £100, could be well spent, to move forwards, I think.
In reality, though, you've got to kind of invest. I mean, still beat around the bush. If you want a great result, sometimes you just need to invest a bit of time and money. So you either invest a lot of thinking and research into training yourself, or you get someone else to help you set up that process. And you might only need them for 3 or 4 sessions, but it might just kickstart you, give you something to work with. But if you don't either invest a lot of time in your own thinking, YouTube research, whatever, or you don't do that, then you might end up just floating around and losing track. And I can't really say that's a good route.
Yeah. No, totally agree. No, that's great. Well, hopefully that helps though, Ed, to get you started. And what we're going to do, we're going to wrap up with a final question, which came from Fred, which is, what do you admire most about your 2 co-hosts? So who's going to kick us off with that?
Silence.
I think that's the answer, Fred.
I like the way we're wrapping up with this. With we've got 3 minutes to get.
Right, I'll go first. I'll keep it fairly. We'll keep it fairly light and fairly brief. But I think, and this is what I made a little joke earlier, because I think we've had a few technical issues in this episode, and I think Pete's probably needed to do a bit of editing around things. But
if you're not watching, the vein on my forehead's like throbbing.
Pete today has been more stressed than I've ever seen him in his life. But the thing that I most admire about Pete is the simplicity, the apparent simplicity of his life, and the apparent relaxed nature and control and boundaries that he's set around his life, and the way he's set his life up to be is very, very he's got a lot of time. He's got a lot of time to go out walking. He always sounds like he's got a very meet Sean in the pub on a Friday afternoon when she finishes work and has a pint, and walks every day and trains and looks after himself and looks after the people he looks after, but seems to do it in a very, very organized way that doesn't seem to involve a lot of stress and worry. So that's my main thing for Pete. For Paul, I would say is I think probably the amount, how well read he is, and the breadth of knowledge that he brings to a lot of the conversations that we have, that goes outside of the scope of fitness and training and nutrition, and just generally very well read and generally very articulate and very intelligent, and can bring quotes from classic novels and, classic TV and classic music and all the rest of it to the conversations, which kind of enrich the conversations that we have outside of the apparent immediate scope of the conversation. So that's my two, Fred. Hopefully you've enjoyed that. I'll pass on to the other two.
It's a polite way of saying that I have great ability of going off to random tangents.
Yeah, put it this way, every episode that would do would be about half an hour shorter if Paul wasn't.
My internet worked as well.
Right, I'll go next because I'll start with Paul actually, because James had just said like articulate was a word I was waiting for you to say there, because I think Paul's very good at explaining things. We'll talk about stuff and then he'll say it again with fancier words, but that's understandable as well, which is a good thing to do.
Notes,
But you're talking about, like, you come out with quotes and all that because you're very well read. But I mean, you worked in publishing, you've worked in the music industry, so you were talking about creativity earlier. You named this podcast because we were going to call it the Three Amigos or something around that.
Based on a Chevy Chase movie, that shows.
It was. I think we'd even mocked up the three of our faces in the anyway. So you came up with that, and then we went with the David Bowie thing and all that sort of stuff. So I think that is brilliant. It's. I was going to say something else there as well, but I can't remember what it was because we're starting talking about Chevy Chase. But there you go. But with James, I think definitely the way you've started looking at stuff recently. As well, and the way, like you said it earlier about how setting goals and you'd be all over that and all that. You've been in the industry a long time, and there's all of this stuff out there for someone in your position who's got a gym. You've done very well, and then people then start to go and try and coach other people to do that as well and do this and like be all over the shop and be like, right, now that I've set that up and it kind of, I don't know if it runs itself or not, but you seem to be stepping back from that to free your time up to spend with the kids and with Steph and all that sort of stuff. That's great, but you're not then going, right, now what can I put in place of that and then fill that time back up again. So that is brilliant because you can see it. You get to go to the pictures. You spend a lot of time with the kids. Obviously, you get to go on holiday. You go on holiday with the people from the gym, the community you've set up. I see that. I just think that community that you've got around you is brilliant. So that's the biggest thing for me. I've seen you put posts out to say, if not like, I will help you with your business and help you to get to six figures and all this. And if anyone listening to this doesn't know what I'm talking about, that's all over Facebook and everything for anyone in the fitness industry. Anyone in any industry, I think, make six figures in this and that, right? James could easily be one of those people, like using his gym and going, look, and I could do this and blah, blah, blah. And he could easily like try and flog that. But you don't. You put a post out and saying, if anyone wants to chat, if anyone's struggling, if anyone's new to the industry, if anyone wants to do anything, just get in touch and we can talk about it. So it's like using that time that you've freed up to give back, which is, I think that's brilliant.
Oh, thank you.
Anyway, I'm going to go and get a box of tissues now.
I'll start off with James. What I love about James and his approach is clarity of purpose and commitment to the kind of purity of the art of fitness. We've got a great facility. I mean, I would love to have something, ultimately on the scale and with the level of community and the interaction that you have and that you've built. I mean, it goes back to what Pete said, reaching out to other trainers who need help. When I was first starting out, you were very, very kind to find some time, sit down with me in a coffee shop round from near your gym. And that was really great. And I still think when I'm making decisions about how I run my gym, and I think, what would James be doing? Or I take inspiration from your posts. I mean, the clarity of purpose that you have, and it's a great model to work by. I mean, I think if there's anyone in Cheltenham, Chelmsford, sorry,
Yeah, don't go to Cheltenham next weekend, otherwise you'll miss David Keown.
I came in for kettlebells, so I got his dogs or whatever it is. Yeah, no, it's I don't know why they wouldn't train with you, to be fair. They'd be mad. But yeah, so so whenever I see a post or whatever, it's always well thought out. You're always on the case with anything that's new. You're never behind the times. You're in front of it, and you're willing to test things out, which is great. It's great inspiration for your clients and for us as well. It's one of the reasons we get such great guests, I think, is because they can see how active you are and how you reach out. And then Peter, I mean, what I like about Peter is you're just your sheer honesty about every aspect of how you do things. The fact that you are willing to be completely open about what a journey looks like and what you've been through and what you've had to encounter in order to get where you are now, which is by design. A lot of people have aspirations and goals, and for me, because I've got a lot that are going on at any one point, and at times you can feel crushed by it. And so it's great to see how, because I know that you've been through a lot of stresses and stuff like that when you're making transitions into new roles, or whether it's relationships, or whether it's finances, or whether it's just your work-life balance, as we talk about balance. But you've been an architect of your own life and very much empowered by it, particularly over the last 5 or 6 years, rather than being a victim to it. And you talk in very empowering language, which is quite inspirational for me, and I'm no doubt it gets you clients. It gets your clients the results they want, and that's why they're so loyal to you, is because you walk the walk, you're honest about it, and you're open as well. So that it's fun to be around that.
Excellent. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you for everyone and thank you to Fred for that question. And thank you to everyone else who asked questions today. So
we've not got one more that we'll put out there. That was
yes,
about.
Yeah. So we also had a question.
Just to try and get some info on that.
Yeah, well remembered. We did have a question that came in from Becca Johnson, and it was, I would like a cure to hormonal eating. So if you can resolve that for me, I'll be eternally grateful. Now, this is from Becca, who's a lady, a female, asking about eating everything in sight 1 week of the month. LOL. Okay, so it's difficult. We're obviously 3 men in our 40s, and it would be silly for me to try and give any advice whatsoever on that. But what we're going to do, we're going to kind of open that up and say, if there's anyone out there who, is a specialist or works with women specifically and has dealt with this, or if you are a woman who has these cravings every month, and you feel that it's kind of linked to your hormones, and you almost feel powerless to do anything about that, but you have, learned how to deal with that, learned how to improve it. Or someone who can help us with this question, then we would love to maybe have a chat and maybe potentially have someone as a guest down the line. So thank you so much for asking the question, Becca, but we are politely going to decline trying to wing it and answer it when we're going to kind of reach out to someone or other people who may be in a better place to answer it properly for you. Okay, so thank you for that as well. So thanks to Paul for your question. Thanks to Tara for your question. Thanks to Ed, and thanks to Fred, and thanks to Becca as well. We will be back next week with Tina Morin, who Steve, Coach Fury Holliner put us in touch with. So we should be back with Tina next week. We've also got Leonie and Michaela, I think, coming on just following the Winter Olympics in a few weeks. They're competing at the moment out in Austria, I think. So I think we've got that lined up for April. We've got other guests lined up coming up. So we will speak to you all soon on that. Please do share, like, subscribe, leave a review if you're listening on a platform that allows you to do that. If you want to join the Facebook group, just search groups and search Health Oddity, and we will let you into the group that way. And again, thanks again to everyone who recently has given us some feedback on recent episodes. Just off the top of my head, obviously Chris Denning, Jim Hatcher, Paul Field. I think Tara gave me feedback in person, Nikki, Steph, different people. But yeah, thanks so much to everyone for listening, and we will be back with you next week. Goodbye.
You've been listening to Health Odyssey with Peter Lant, Paul Bassett, and James St. Pierre. To get your regular fix of hype-free health, you can subscribe and leave a review wherever you get your favorite podcasts. You can find out more on today's and other topics at healthodyssey.com or find us on Facebook or Instagram by searching for Health Odyssey.